So, Jonathan, back in April, we met up in Hamburg, Germany, and had a little stroll. Cherry blossoms in bloom. Spring is here.
We did. It was great, James. I mean, I love Hamburg. We enjoyed that long walk down to the fish market.
Jonathan, I'm seeing a lot of flags fluttering in the breeze, a lot of masts, a lot of boats of different sizes.
And a lot of cranes. Yeah.
And we saw a lot of seagulls. And then sank quite a few beers afterwards.
Hi, Jonathan. Cheers to a beer.
It's Hamburg style. Prost.
Which was excellent.
Coffee Plaza. And during one of our walks, we stumbled across an unusual sculpture.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. It's a giant bean.
That is a giant bean. Wow.
We were standing at the base of a giant coffee bean made of bronze. It was like twice the height of us, and it was covered in text and pictures.
It reminded me of like when I first saw it, it was like, this is an Aztec sculpture from another planet. What on earth is going on here?
Whoa. Wow.
It was an homage to the coffee industry.
It was.
And here are all the different types of coffees you can have. Americano.
Cafe latte, milk cafe, espresso, bico from Portugal.
And they even had my favorite composer of all time. My favorite part of this, Jonathan, is, I'm a huge fan of Johann Sebastian Bach. They had the first couple of bars of Bach's Coffee Cantata, all written out.
Oh, we have the coffee cantata.
We have the coffee cantata.
Wow, that's incredible.
12 bars of it, all written out.
This is terrific.
Okay, I'll do the bass. You can do this. You can do the tenor.
I don't think that's going to happen. But you can do the whole thing.
Well, I was very disappointed you weren't going to sing.
Well, I think I might be better off on Espresso Macchiato, actually.
Espresso Macchiato?
That was in the Eurovision this year. It was one of the great iconic
was.
Eurovision songs that only Eurovision could throw up.
That song will be on the bean in a couple of years.
Do you know, you're dead right. It will. Yeah.
Espresso macchiato.
So James, this bean reflects the fact that coffee has changed Hamburg. Here's a stat for you. 1 in 3 of all the cups of coffee drunk in Europe, the beans in that cup have passed through Hamburg.
Wow. 1 in 3. That's a lot of coffee.
That is a hell of a lot of coffee. And that enormous amount of coffee coming through the city, flowing through it, molds it into becoming a whole city serving the coffee industry. That's the story we're covering in the first half of this episode. How coffee changes one of Europe's biggest, most important port cities, Hamburg, the port for Germany.
And coffee plays such an important role here in Hamburg. They even built a shrine to coffee. The mythical Hamburg Coffee Exchange. And in us coming to Hamburg, Jonathan, we went on a pilgrimage to try to find it.
We absolutely did, James. But the story doesn't stop there, because once coffee has shaped Hamburg, the story flips around, because what I see now is the way in which Hamburg has then shaped the world of coffee. If you walk into any specialty coffee cafe around the world, you're probably going to find a piece of Hamburg there.
Yes, because our partner sponsor for this series is Malkönig, manufacturers of coffee grinders. And they are headquartered here in Hamburg. I'm James Harper, creator of the Filter Stories documentary podcast.
And I'm Jonathan Morris, professional historian and author of the book Coffee, A Global History.
And this is Series 3 of A History of Coffee, the story of how a psychoactive seed changed the world and continues to shape our lives today.
And in this episode, we're looking at the story of how coffee changed the city of Hamburg, and then how Hamburg changed the story of coffee. So, James, I think if you want to understand why Hamburg is so important in the history of coffee in Europe, really the easiest way to do it is to think about its geography within Europe. Because if you want to get coffee, right, relatively quickly and easily to essentially Central and Eastern Europe, so Berlin, Prague, Poland, right, you've got one load of coffee. Where's the best place to dump that coffee?
Right. Well, let's look at a map. I'm a ship. I've come from a tropical part of the world.
Yeah.
You go probably between France and the UK, right?
Yeah.
On the English Channel.
The English Channel, yeah.
And then you hit a wall. It's a massive thing getting in the way of getting your coffee into Central Europe.
That's a nice way of talking about Denmark.
It's like a big hand, outstretched palm saying stop. And if you really want to take it by sea, you have to go all the way up Denmark and then all the way down through like booby traps, all these little islands everywhere with shallow seas and rocky outcrops to try to get it somewhere into the Baltic Sea. It's treacherous.
To say the least.
But on the map, underneath Denmark, there's this giant slither of water. It goes really far down into Germany.
Yeah.
There, underneath Denmark, is Hamburg.
Exactly, on the Elbe, right? The Elbe River. Yeah, and so that is exactly where you're going to take your coffee ship.
The boat. And we saw it for ourselves on a lovely romantic evening cruise.
James.
So here we are on this romantic river cruise, our 3-year river cruise.
Yeah. I think it was the equivalent of the river bus, let's be honest.
It was the river bus, that's what it was. What aromas are we getting here by the industrial docks?
Oh, well, I'd say touch of petrol vapor, wouldn't you?
But what really stuck out to me anyway was just how wide the Elbe is.
Yeah.
I just noticed that there's not just one container ship over there.
No,
There's two
they're
container
absolutely
ships.
lined up. Yeah.
2 container ships lined up. This river is so wide it can fit many, many container ships. So I get it, right? So geographically speaking, Hamburg is just perfect, right? Really, really wide river underneath Denmark. And, you get your goods into Hamburg, and then from there it can go into Central Europe through canals and railroads and roads and everything else.
Yeah, that's right. But, and this is why I think it's such an interesting city, there is a whole other reason why Hamburg is so central to this story and why you want to take your ship to Hamburg. It's really about a word. And it's a word that is actually, I've realized, of course, the current US president's favorite word.
Oh, dear.
Tariffs. Or rather, what it's about is no tariffs.
No tariffs.
No tariffs. Because Hamburg has been a free port for about 1,000 years.
Huh.
And a free port, no tariffs.
Help me understand this, right? So give me an example. Let's say we're in the era before coffee. We're back in medieval times, the 1300s, 1400s. How does being a free port work?
So at that time, you would have probably been bringing in sort of wool, textiles, things like that. But also it became sort of very dominant for some weird stuff. Whale blubber, for example.
Poor whales.
Poor whales, but Hamburg has got great skills in whale blubber manipulation. I'm not a great expert on whales, which you'll probably be pleased to know. But the point of that is then, so imagine this thing, right? You bring in your whale, you work the whale, you can then in effect sell the whale product on.
Right.
You haven't paid to bring it in, but you sell it on, and they effectively, your customers who then import that from you, they have to pay the duty. You didn't have to pay a previous duty.
So Hamburg's special because if your whale blubber would go into any other place, you pay a duty to get the whale blubber into the port. That's a cost.
Yeah.
Then you process the whale blubber, you put it into smaller packages, and then you send it again. And then, as it goes into another territory, you pay a second duty. But Hamburg, being a free port, the whale blubber comes in, you don't put a duty on it.
Correct.
So it's cheaper. And then the duty is only paid when it gets, shipped off again to another place.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So Hamburg is, well, we can tell why it became such like a shipping focused place.
Absolutely.
Because amazing geography, right? Right on the Denmark.
Yeah,
Very wide river taking it there. And this really special tax arrangement.
that's right.
Cool. Hamburg, it's here.
Yeah.
It's got tax benefits. It has amazing geography. So where does the story of coffee begin with Hamburg? Because I know that coffee doesn't enter the story until around the 1500s.
So we've got this coffee. It's coming into Hamburg. In fact, there's some nice things about the Hamburg merchant class who used to apparently sit out on the terrace of coffee houses watching their ships come into the port.
What an image. And we're talking beautiful ships, those kind of big sailing ships back in the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge masts.
Yeah. Huge masts. Imagine hundreds of those things.
3 masts, multiple levels of deck, as wide as like a city block.
Exactly. Yeah. So you'd be looking at a huge masted traffic jam, basically, But anyway, these guys sitting there, drinking their coffee, enjoying watching their boats come in.
Okay, so the coffee's coming in on these beautiful wooden ships. Where's it coming from? And who's drinking it?
Who's drinking it in the first place is obviously the kind of the nobility, the upper classes.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee begins to be popular very quickly in Hamburg. And it's a fascinating story because what happens is as the Germans begin to want to drink coffee, so those upper classes, the nobility, are trying to stop them drink coffee. Coffee, in part, is really supposed to be something that is only for those upper classes, partly to save on exchange.
Right, they didn't want to trade away their precious gold coins in exchange for coffee.
But also just to keep social distinction. So the king, the monarchy, actually employed people to walk around on the streets and smell. These are the coffee sniffers that they're called, to smell if there's any coffee roasting going on.
Nuts.
And then, of course, if there is, they confiscate those beans.
Right, because people were roasting these in their homes.
This is the whole point, is that, coffee demand is just too great. So then the king throws on a coffee tax. So, the government has moved from trying to ban it to now just trying to extract the maximum value from it, really.
So yeah, this is a really fascinating story. And actually, I've written an article in the coffee magazine Standard about Frederick the Great of Prussia and how his coffee tax still haunts me and everybody else who drinks coffee in Germany. Frederick the Great is a fascinating character. Everybody loves him and hates him at the same time. If you want to read that article, there's a link to Standard in the show notes. So Jonathan, what happens after the nobility fails to ban coffee?
To cut to the chase here, by the 1900s, the stat we have for coffee consumption in Germany per capita is the highest in Europe, 3.3 kilos of coffee per capita. That's a lot of coffee, particularly for the 1900s. So Germany, with Hamburg in the forefront, basically becomes the European coffee capital in this point.
Wow. So 130 years ago, Germans are the biggest coffee consumers in Europe.
Correct. It's damned impressive. It's a lot of coffee.
But it turns out, across Europe, and even in Germany, there were loads of other places, other ports, that Germany could have used to bring coffee into the country. But Hamburg eventually wipes the floor and takes the lion's share of the trade. Coming up next, we explore what else a city needs to have, beyond geography and a nice tax arrangement, to become the importing destination for a continent. So here we have, right, a situation where at 1900, right, on the nose, the German coffee market seems to be exploding.
Yeah.
A lot of Germans are drinking coffee. We have the Industrial Revolution in full swing here. We have steam technology coming through, a lot of factories, people are drinking it all over the place. Let's drag it back to Hamburg. Hamburg wasn't the only port that had a lot of coffee coming through.
No.
And to help us understand this period of history deeper, we were actually joined in Hamburg by your friend Jonathan, a German historian.
My name is Margret Schulte-Berbühl. I'm a professor of history at the University of Düsseldorf.
I usually introduce her by saying Margret is to chocolate what I am to coffee, because she's an absolute expert on chocolate. But of course, being Margret, she also knows her coffee.
And so regarding the trading situation within Germany, Margret mentioned there were many ports competing for Hamburg's trade.
Before the 1880s, the Germans got coffee along the Rhine from the Netherlands. In Frankfurt, they received the coffee from France, and in the south of Germany as well as Italy, and so they got it from Trieste.
But Hamburg eventually takes the trade, becomes the place for coffee imports. How does that happen?
Okay, so this is an interesting story, James, because it's how Hamburg development interacts with political developments in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we said, Hamburg is a city-state. Remember, Germany doesn't get unified until the 1860s.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand what we mean by Germany before the 1860s, because there is no Germany. Germany at that point is really just a collection of hundreds of little kingdoms.
There were more than 500 small duchies and bishoprics.
Does that explain why there are so many castles in Germany?
Yeah, that certainly does.
Hey, everybody needs a castle, right? 500 castles at least.
The only thing that sort of holds them together is the fact that they're speaking German.
Huh.
And then, James, during the 1860s, suddenly Germany is rapidly uniting. All these states, all these microstates are coming together very quickly to form a modern German state. Let's test your historical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Who kind of is the father of German unification? Who's the big figure?
Well, let me tell you, he has amazing mutton chops. Bismarck.
Otto von Bismarck, exactly. Otto von Bismarck, the great Prussian chancellor. Before German unification, Prussia is this expanding state in the north of Germany. Its capital is actually where Berlin is today.
My home.
And under Bismarck's chancellorship, it goes on to unify all the other small kingdoms around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the question for Hamburg has been doing well as a little city-state, but what does it do when suddenly, instead of having lots of little city-states and micro-duchies, etc. around it, it has one big state to deal with? And the answer is Hamburg decides it makes sense for it to jump into Germany, jump into this unification process. And actually, at the beginning, that's really great for Hamburg because it remains acting as a free port for this new state, which it now gives it access to a huge German market.
Right, enormous.
Then, in the 1870s, culminating in 1879, Bismarck changes course. Bismarck has been pretty much a standard liberal free trader.
Okay.
But he converts in the 1870s to wanting to introduce tariffs to protect infant German industry. So suddenly Hamburg is in big trouble, right?
Right.
How can it be a free port in a country that is now committed to high tariff barriers?
I mean, what is the point of Hamburg if it can't profit from that juicy, lucrative tax arrangement where it doesn't pay for tariffs? It doesn't have tariffs. It's the whole point of Hamburg.
This goes to extensive negotiation. And what happens is that a much reduced but potentially still available free port is allowed.
Okay.
So Hamburg has to build it.
Okay.
What they build is what we call the Speicherstadt, the warehouse city. It's one of the most efficient transportation hubs in the world at that point. Remember, I mean, this is the 1880s. It's absolutely pioneering. It's so systematic. It's incredibly efficient. It's very, dare I say, German.
What Germany used to be.
Till they allowed you in, yeah.
Yes, quite. And Jonathan, what's really cool is that when we were there, today, you can still see the Speicherstadt, the warehouse city that was built back in the 1880s. We went to the Speicherstadt Museum. And we could see how this warehouse city actually worked. Oh, this is so cool. Look at all this stuff.
It's really cool. Great.
It was really hammered home when we saw this map in the Speicherstadt Museum, which showed you all the railway lines, the road lines, the waterways that connect into Hamburg. So you have water to the warehouse, and then look at these train lines, like veins sneaking into every bit of the hand of these ports.
That's a good point, yeah.
It was like I was in an anatomy class. There were so many veins, like transport links, making their way into the fingers of the Speicherstadt and the docks. Extremely efficient logistics hub.
Yeah.
Let's run through an example of goods coming into Hamburg and how they would go through the Speicherstadt. Let's say big ship loaded with coffee sails down the wide Elbe River into Hamburg. What happens?
So, okay, James, we're bringing your big ship in.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the coffee taken out of that ship will be stored on warehouses on the other side of the river.
Mm-hmm.
But then bit by bit, it will be brought into the Speicherstadt. So it comes in on these barges, and they kind of come into those man-made, sort of long, thin man-made islands with these big 5-story red brick buildings running along the waterline. On one side of them, of course, is the water, for the barges that ship in the goods. On the other side, there are road and rail links. And the goods basically then go through those buildings. We've seen the pictures, haven't we, James, of people hauling up the coffee sacks to the tops of the buildings. It's just, you know what it's like, James? It's like an open pallet floor, isn't it? With no side whatsoever. I mean, you've got to keep that very level not to have a big problem.
And these sacks could fall down.
And then the coffee, it will be sorted, it will be graded, it will be divided into where it's going, and then once it's all ready, out it goes from the other side onto the road and rail links that will take it into Germany, or alternatively, if it's going to be re-exported, shipped out of Hamburg without ever paying any tariff.
Yeah. So what we have here is this extremely efficient infrastructure, which when you add it to the fact that Hamburg, geographically located under Denmark, right? So just perfect for being an importing destination. And then, of course, it's a tax haven. And then you add the Speicherstadt on top, like this efficient transportation hub. Like, it's a no-brainer. Of course, Hamburg was going to become the importing place in Germany by the end of the 19th century.
Absolutely. And basically, this becomes the heart of trading coffee in Europe, right? Which also means that the finance is in Hamburg, which means that the deals are being cut in Hamburg, and they're all relating to bits of coffee held around Hamburg.
Right. And Jonathan, I think there is no better symbol of just how important Hamburg is in the coffee trade globally than the mythical church-like structure that was built for coffee, the Hamburg Coffee Exchange.
Church is right, James, because, I mean, if you were to go in, it would look like a church, yeah? It's got those very tall ceilings, intricately carved wooden counters, ornate chandeliers, and, of course, stained glass windows.
Wow. And we tried to find it. Yeah, I think the coffee exchange is around the corner.
Let's go have a look.
We spent a good hour or so, 2 hours, just knocking around the Speicherstadt, trying to find the exchange.
Exactly. If you were a stained glass window, where would you go? Where would you go?
We're looking up at every window of every building, trying to find those legendary stained glass windows.
Should we just walk around the edge and just check they're not facing out anywhere?
And we thought we got pretty close when we turned a corner into this beautiful courtyard.
Which is really rather nice.
Yeah. And even smelled some roasted coffee.
Yeah.
I smell coffee roasting.
Oh yes, that's definitely coffee roasting.
But no, it was just a coffee trader sample room. That's totally wrong. All right, let's go back, take a right. God. But in the end, no luck. Couldn't find them.
No, and as we eventually realised, James, there was an obvious reason for that, which was that it was actually destroyed during the Second World War. But in a sense, that kind of symbolised some of the difficulty that Hamburg went through during that era from the First World War up to the end of the Second World War. First of all, we have Germany, of course, immediately after the war has to pay reparations. The loser of the war pays reparations to the other countries. Then comes that kind of famous hyperinflation in the 20s. And then comes the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. So, of course, Hitler drags Germany into a world war. And not only does Hamburg cease to be the focus of the coffee global trade during this period, it's the focus, of course, of the Allied bombs during this period, being very much the port city that was so reliant on. It's only really once the war is over, Germany's been divided into East and West. Hamburg is obviously in West Germany. And they actually began to try to revive the coffee exchange and built a new one.
And we also tried to find that new exchange that was built in the 50s. We, again, walked around and looked at Google Maps and we couldn't find it.
We couldn't find it. And it was so annoying because you and I were both convinced by all these stories. When you were reading the guidebooks of the time, that it had beautiful stained glass windows and it was a whole temple to coffee. And it was a whole, I mean, it was supposed to be a symbol of the rebirth of Hamburg and, the centrality of coffee to that.
Right. But we struggled to find it because it's not operational today.
You're right, James. That coffee exchange opens and closes within a few years.
And, Jonathan, from my perspective, today, of course, historically, coffee had a huge role in Hamburg. It led to the creation of the Speicherstadt, if nothing else, a crown jewel in the trading warehouses of Europe. But to be frank, what I saw when we were there in Hamburg was so disappointing. It wasn't Hamburg as the center of coffee at all. Because, look, the new coffee exchange that opened in the 50s, spent a whole afternoon looking around and couldn't find it. The Speicherstadt itself, so much of it was bombed, and the buildings that survived, Margriet told me, from the 50s onwards, they were all falling into disrepair and decay.
Buildings that are just rotten.
And actually, it got so bad that in the 90s, many of them were rebuilt for us tourists.
Even some of these old buildings were restored to some extent.
So this is all a bit of a historical recreation just for us.
Yeah, just for the tourists.
And on top of that, it's being rebuilt and it's just dead. It's like you're walking through the downtown of like a mid-sized American city in the sense that it's full of cars. So many of the beautiful old Speicherstadt buildings have been gutted to turn into multi-story car parks, and it's completely soulless. In what way can Hamburg be a center of coffee anymore?
Well, James, it can be the centre of the coffee trade because the coffee trade does return to Hamburg after World War II, in particularly the 1960s, because Hamburg is very, very swift to get into the big, great shipping logistics revolution, which is what, James?
Containers.
Containers, exactly. Hamburg develops itself as a container port. And that means that once again, combining its container port status and its free port status, it is able to reposition itself at the heart of coffee.
It's interesting, if you go on Google Maps, actually there's a space underneath Hamburg on the other side of the river, which is much bigger than Hamburg itself, and it's just full of containers, nothing else.
But what it means is we don't need the Speicherstadt. Those buildings, those beautiful red brick buildings are redundant. The Speicherstadt is replaced by the container docks. And the coffee exchange, well, it's all digitized these days, huh? You don't need people in a space anymore trading coffee. It's all done on computers.
Where's the romance though, Jonathan? Where's the romance? And now, coming up next, we explore. Yes, of course, coffee has shaped Hamburg. But how has Hamburg shaped the global coffee world? So, we've seen how coffee was integral to the shape of Hamburg with the Speicherstadt, it becoming this major coffee importing center. And even today, coffee is massively important to Hamburg. Things have digitized, so the Speicherstadt's not what it was, fine. But still, coffee has left its mark in a massive way in Hamburg. And maybe that massive bronze bean being like the perfect symbol. Okay, but what about the question, how has Hamburg shaped coffee? Because frankly, most of the story up until now has been the story of coffee shaping Hamburg, but not really the other way around. How exactly did Hamburg shape the global story of coffee?
So James, have a look at just the huge major global coffee companies that are now actually based in Hamburg. There are a lot.
Go on.
NKG, Norman Cafe Group, they are the importers. They now have about 8.5% of global trade, global coffee, all coffee beans.
That's crazy.
All coffee beans in the world. 8.5% of them owned by these guys.
Huge.
They've got 14 million sacks plus of coffee. That's inconceivable, yeah.
That bean we saw
Yeah.
was outside their headquarters in the Speicherstadt of Hamburg.
In the Speicherstadt.
And like Neumann's operations around the world are enormous. They have so many different subsidiaries in like so many different countries.
You've got 60 companies across 20 countries, all headquartered in Hamburg. Then you've got a company post-Second World War, Chibo, right? Chibo, it begins as this sort of mail order coffee company. That's what its origins are. Today it has about 550 stores in Germany. It's got about 350 outside Germany. It's merged with what was its big rival, Jushu. It's like, a huge roaster in the world.
Also headquartered in Hamburg.
Also headquartered in Hamburg.
And of course, Jonathan, we're missing out another very big company in the world of coffee that's headquartered in Hamburg.
We are indeed. Has a wonderful German name. Malkönig.
Malkönig, the king of grinders.
We went to Malkönig and we spoke with Sven.
I'm Sven Röhreke. I'm for 8 years now business development manager here at Hamro.
And Sven was like the perfect person for us to talk to because he's taken it upon himself to become the company's in-house historian.
4 years ago, I started to do some research on our corporate history.
James, I think it's really interesting looking at the history of Malkönig because the company itself is now 100 years old. Its history gives us a fantastic view of how Hamburg shaped originally the German coffee market through the grinders that it manufactured, how the Germans were drinking coffee, and then how this becomes an international story through which ultimately Hamburg, through Malkönig, very much is shaping the global world of coffee.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see that story then. Let's pick it up from after World War II. It's the 1950s.
Here you can see 4 different grinders from different decades.
Sven had found 4 gorgeous grinders. And they basically look like very early versions of the EK shop grinder.
Yeah.
The modern EK we see on cafes everywhere. It's iconic, a very bold design.
It is a thumpy big thing, right? I mean, this is a serious piece of kit.
But those EK shop grinders of old, they are much more ornate, flowery.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
With a very beautiful design.
Trying to describe these in audio is near impossible, so link in the show notes to our Instagram where you can see them for yourself. So Jonathan, okay, so here we have these beautiful flowery versions of the EK. What does that tell us about the sort of coffees Germany was drinking in the 1950s, 60s, 70s?
The clue is in the name.
Einphasen Kaffeemühle.
Look, as a bit of a science nerd, that was amazing to learn for me. No way! There we go, the EK.
That's what EK stands for. Wow.
EK is an acronym for Einphasen Kaffeemühle.
Yeah, and that translates to a one-phase coffee grinder.
As Ansgar, one of Malkönig's product managers, explained to us, what it means is that you can plug this grinder into any domestic plug socket and it's going to work.
So that means it's made for one-phase power supply. You can use it with the normal power socket.
Because these grinders are just being used in grocery stores, yeah? They're being used on the everyday electricity supply. So these are not specialist goods for factories. They're not specialist goods for industrial process. And of course, we don't have things like supermarkets. These are used in small mom and pop shops to grind the coffee for the customer when the customer comes in.
Got it. Now, Sven tells us that Malkönig grinders were mostly used for coffee.
Basic product was always a coffee grinder.
But they could also be used for other things too.
Poppy seed spices, cutting cheese. Coffee on the one side, cheese on the other.
And Jonathan, it also makes sense to me why these grinders, are so beautiful, so elaborately designed. This is a retail space where you have to entice your customers with beautiful things. You got to have a beautiful grinder in your beautiful store.
You're absolutely right. You've got to have that beautiful grinder in a store. But then we see things starting to shift because the way that Germans drinking their coffee is shifting. Yeah. And we see that very clearly with the development of another kind of grinder that Malkönig began to manufacture, the so-called DK.
We have also our industrial grinders called DK. Well, DK stands for Dreiphasen, so 3-phase coffee grinder. So for these bigger grinders, these industrial grinders, you need this special plug with 3-phase.
Right. So this is a grinder which is designed for an industrial factory setting. Because it's so large, it needs its own very special 3-phase electricity adapter. You very rarely find those in retail stores or people's homes. And Jonathan, we were actually lucky enough to see a DK grinder for ourselves when Ansgar gave us a factory tour.
Here, for example, you see our industrial grinder called DK27.
The DK? And it was amazing because they're so big, like a huge EK. The burrs themselves, the metal discs that actually do the grinding. I've never seen a burr so big. Enormous.
Yeah.
Like it's as big as a dinner plate.
Yeah.
That's like a discus size, yeah?
Yeah, with these burrs you can grind up to 400 kilograms per hour.
If Donkey Kong owned a grinder, this is the grinder he would own.
Well, obviously, it would be a DK.
This is the Donkey Kong. This is the big one. No, look, it's huge. It's much bigger than the others.
It's huge. No, I don't disagree.
Donkey Kong's not a small character. It's a big ape.
This is an industrial grinder. It's being manufactured to sit in an industrial context. It's going to grind coffees at industrial scale, industrial level. So this is Malkönig responding to a big shift actually in how coffee is bought and consumed and how the market gets that coffee to the consumer. Marguerite explains this to us.
In the 1960s, supermarkets emerged and they were a huge success. Today there are hardly any other shops, small shops, unless they are in small villages. And even they can hardly survive the competition with the supermarkets.
In this new world, this new retail world, coffee is then ground up in the roasting plant itself, right? In big quantities. So you need your DK, and you put it in millions of bags, and off it goes to consumers to pick off the supermarket shelves across the country.
Right, so that's supermarket coffee. We also then saw in the Malkönig factory another way in which Germans began drinking their coffee, and that's in bakeries.
Bakeries in Germany are probably the most important outlets for coffees.
Where the coffees would be made on a super automatic espresso machine. And Malkönig actually manufactures the burrs that go inside super automatics as well. So we saw a whole bunch of them, and that becomes, and still is, a massive way in which Germans drink their coffee. But then that gets dwarfed by the rise of espresso.
And now we will enter our burr production.
Here we go. Malkönig these days manufactures mostly burrs for espresso grinders. These are the grinders that sit next to espresso machines.
This is the base plate, and here you see the portafilter fork with the portafilter support.
Up until now, then, this was essentially a German story. But with the rise of specialty, the spread internationally of specialty coffee culture, this becomes a global story. Malkönig becomes an export-orientated company. And of course, nothing exemplifies that better than the key moment of the story of the EK43, the most iconic grinder, and Matt Perger. James, you tell us the story of what happened with Matt Perger, because you were there, I believe.
Well, I was certainly alive for once. So the story is around 15 years ago. Matt Perger, he's a barista in a specialty coffee cafe in Melbourne, Australia.
Hi, my name is Matthew Perger. I'm from St. Ali and Sensory Lab in Melbourne. I've been a barista for 6 or 7 years now.
In his cafe, he had an EK43. This grinder would only be used when a customer picked up a bag of beans and was like, hey, can you grind this for me for home? It was not used for anything else, and certainly not for espresso. It wasn't designed for espresso.
This grinder was made for filter coffee grinding, for shop grinding.
But then one day, Matt decides to grind some coffee for espresso in the EK. And lo and behold, it tasted amazing. And he incorporates this into a World Barista Championship routine.
Yeah, Matthew has introduced a whole new paradigm to the barista competitions with this routine. He's grinding on an unusual grinder. So you've got this gigantic grinder here. Tell us about it.
So that's a grinder that no one really uses for espresso. It's called a filter coffee grinder. Espresso grinders are traditionally designed to produce really large and really small particles that block the flow of the espresso machine and give you a 30-second shot. But this one is designed to produce an extremely even particle size.
And on the back of his performance, showing the EK being used for espresso, the specialty coffee world goes gangbusters for the EK because the coffee grounds themselves are very uniform in size, which can help you get very specific, pleasurable flavor profiles. If you, dear listener, want to nerd out more on this, you can listen to an entire episode I made about grind distribution curves and their effects on flavor. Link in the show notes.
So, James, this is the point I wanted to make, yeah? The EK, it's now everywhere around the world, yeah? It's symbolic of specialty coffee. Every specialty coffee bar has an EK. We go in, we see the shape. The EK, it's from Hamburg. It's from Marconi. It's designed in Hamburg. It's a product of Hamburg. It's developed in Hamburg. And Hamburg itself is a product of coffee developing the city. And now we have Hamburg exporting its coffee culture to the world via Marconi and via all those other companies that we also mentioned previously.
And Jonathan, let's take the story right up to the present day. The most recent thing that Marconi launched that I thought was super cool is a grinder which talks to the espresso machine. And so, for example, if the espresso is running too fast, it tells the grinder that, and then the grinder adjusts the grind setting automatically. And the idea here is that it just makes the barista's life so much easier. They don't have to focus on adjusting the grind setting all the time because it's all done automatically. But I wanted to see whether it could survive the biggest test of all. This is you kind of going in cold, Jonathan, into a machine and a grinder, a cafe-level professional setup here. Would this machine work? Would the grinder be adjusted correctly when used by someone who had never worked in a cafe before? You, Jonathan.
See if I can remember which way to take the portafilter out, and let's hope. Good. So what I did is pull a shot of espresso. First, I just put the portafilter into the grinder. It gives me the exact amount of coffee. Nice.
Well, 19 grams, Jonathan, on the nose.
19 grams on the nose. See, you
How
didn't
did you
think
manage that?
I don't know.
With cell, it's very simple, huh?
Yeah, right.
Give you always the right amount out of it.
Then I locked it into the espresso machine, pulled a shot of coffee. In we go.
Portafilter locked in.
Portafilter locked. I'm going to sit back and watch the perfect espresso that I'm going to produce for you. And it was coming out too fast.
It is maybe now a little bit too fast, so the grinder will now automatically adjust the grind size a little bit finer.
Okay. So then what happens, is the grinder automatically adjusted the grind so that next time the espresso would flow out at the correct speed.
Jonathan, you just adjusted the grinder by making a coffee.
Hey, told you I was good.
By telekinesis, you have changed this grinder.
The only thing that's surprising me here, James, is that you're still on your feet, not having fallen over in shock that I've managed to do that.
So, Jonathan, that's the episode. Coffee shaped Hamburg, and then Hamburg shaped the coffee world. And our episode could end right now. But I want to mention one last thing that happened to us just before we left Hamburg. Literally hours before we were due to catch our trains.
So here is the block O.
Yeah.
You, myself and Margriet, we were in the Speicherstadt Museum, and then we got a tip-off.
Schuppen da stehen, da war die Kaffeebörse drin. Hier haben wir einmal den Saal der Kaffeebörse.
We finally got a tip-off about the exchange.
Yeah.
The rebuilt coffee exchange. We've got 1 hour with our tip-off.
So what the museum director told us is that the coffee exchange is now actually part of a hotel. And it was just down the road.
That's right.
And we got to the hotel, and the lobby, it's full of ships and kind of like trading port memorabilia.
Yeah.
It's a cannon boat of 1903.
Yes. But then we went up some stairs, up here, followed a couple of signs. The Bursensaal. We went over the canal.
Guys, we're gonna go across the bridge.
A bridge covered walkway that's owned by the hotel.
Yeah.
Look at this. We're like over the water on a bridge connecting these two buildings.
Wow.
And there, on our right, we found the coffee exchange.
And there it is, the Kaffeebusse.
With like 1950s stylings on the doors.
Wow.
All right.
We found the coffee exchange. Wow, I'm blown away by this. Blown away by it. Which It's basically being used as a function room, right?
It's a function room.
I mean, that's really what it is. It's a function room.
But it's almost been like frozen in time as a result.
It is absolutely frozen in time.
It's
just stunning.
crazy.
But it was just wonderful. This is like the wow moment.
This is the wow.
This is the wow moment.
Jonathan, look at the clocks. Look at the clocks.
I'm looking.
We have Hamburg, New
Rio,
York,
New York.
and Rio.
Oh my goodness me.
The three most important time centers for coffee here. Brazil, New York, and Hamburg. That's nuts. And we finally saw the stained glass windows.
Yeah, absolutely. It was brilliant.
We're on what seems to me a Brazilian coffee plantation, given the geography, very flat terrain.
Yeah. And the coffee hedging.
Yes, and perfectly symmetrical rows all the way into the distance. And we have pickers left and right of people who clearly not Europeans, not white, picking the coffee, dumping it into a big pile of red cherries in the center.
Every cherry is red.
You could feel the ghosts of the coffee traders of old doing their work in this room. Also, notice this, like, look at the beautiful light just streaming right in. It's like half this room is just bathed in tall, gorgeous windows with light.
Yeah.
It would have been a lovely place to work, on a sunny day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's a balcony, you can go outside, smoke your cigarette, of course, discuss the latest moves in the coffee price.
Yeah.
Wow.
You should imagine quite a lot of that happened, actually.
Yeah.
And even the more nostalgic for the fact that this was the rebuilt exchange that hardly ever saw any trade. Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. And it is like walking into a bit of a time capsule.
It really is.
And a particularly weird time capsule, because it's not like, okay, this is a really ancient building. It's like, this was a modern building in which they moved the institution and then kaboom, the lights went off. But the great thing there, James, is, okay, the exchange no longer functioning, but Hamburg, my God, it's functioning.
It's functioning.
Hamburg continues to be such a big coffee place.
Look at that, the Hamburger Kaffee Tin Min Market.
This is incredible.
There it is, that's the actual ledger where they put the prices in. Oh my God. Strictly soft, good to large bean, good to fine roast, good cup. Basis, prime Santos.
Wow.
Come to our Instagrams, mine at Filter Stories Podcast, Jonathan's at Coffee History JM, to see this coffee exchange for yourself.
What a wonderful place, and what a wonderful thing to see, and to kind of finish our work in Hamburg there was just quite remarkable.
Marguerite, well, we left on a high.
Well, really nice to meet you again.
Marguerite produced a book called Kaffee ist fertig, with contributions from many people, and Marguerite editors it. And it is a fantastic guide to all kinds of things about coffee in Germany and its history.
Link in the show notes.
We found the hidden treasure.
Which we really did.
Yeah. I keep thinking someone will come in and throw us out because it's all been a dream, James.
It's a fever dream.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for listening.
So, Jonathan, what's coming up in the next episode?
In the next episode, James, we are going back to see what we can find out about the origins and indeed the prehistory of coffee in Ethiopia.
And can we use that story to pay more to the communities who live in and around those wild coffee forests in Ethiopia to continue nurturing them for the future?
If you want to see a little bit more of what we got up to in Hamburg, I think you need to visit our Instagrams.
You do. If you come to mine at Filter Stories Podcast, you will see images of the coffee exchange.
And I will also post some historical images, not least of the Hamburg harbour in years gone past. Might even add one of James.
I feel flattered.
If you'd like to know more about the history of coffee, may I humbly recommend consulting my book, Coffee, A Global History.
Highly recommended, link in the show notes. And if you'd like to support my work making coffee documentaries, you can support me directly on coffee.com. That's ko-fi.com/filter stories. It's basically like Patreon, but run by nicer people.
Okay, well, if you want to buy James a coffee, go to Coffee then. If you've enjoyed the episode, please tell your friends, press subscribe,
Another thing that would really, really help us is if you could rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a review. And another really helpful thing is create a screen grab of you listening to this podcast, post it on Instagram as a story, and then tag us so we can thank you.
Which would be brilliant.
History of Coffee was produced by me, James Harper, and you, Professor Jonathan Morris. I edit the episodes, and I also write and play the piano music.
And so, goodbye from Hamburg, where the coffee is flowing like the River Elbe.
Oh, so poetic.
Thank you.